Hello everyone, my name is Debbie Jones-Snyders and I'm from the Hopedale Presbyterian Church. I'm delighted to welcome children and families to our church school lessons and crafts. We have two stories today, and one is Crossing the Red Sea and the other is God Provides Water and Food in the Desert. These are both adapted from Mission Bible Class with images by Sweet Publishing and licensed by Free Bible Images. We have a variety of activities for you, including coloring and two crafts. One's the crossing of the Red Sea and the other is manna from heaven. And we have a variety of other activities, including word searches, mazes, and crosswords. Today, we are going to hear about some miracles in the Bible. And this is with the story, Crossing the Red Sea. God's people, the Israelites, had been slaves in Egypt for 430 years. Now they were finally free to leave and go and make a home in their very own land. God had chosen Moses as their leader, so they packed everything up that they had and followed him out of Egypt. Over 1 million Israelites set off. Moses always knew which direction to go because God put a big, tall pillar of cloud in front of them to point the way. And at night, they followed a big, tall pillar of fire. They never got lost because God always showed the correct way to go. Eventually, the pillar stopped by the water called the Red Sea. The Israelites camped by water and waited for what God wanted them to do next. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, the Pharaoh and his officials began thinking about how all of the Israelites had left. God had proven through the 10 plagues that he was more powerful than the king of Egypt and all of the Egyptian gods. At that time, Pharaoh and the people had told the Israelites to leave Egypt, but now they were having second thoughts. If all the slaves left Egypt, they thought, then who would do all of the work? So Pharaoh decided to chase after the Israelites and make them come back. He sent all of his horses and chariots and all of his horsemen and troops. When God's people saw the Egyptian army approaching in the distance, they became very afraid. There was nowhere to go to get away. The army was behind them, and the Red Sea was in front of them. They were trapped. The people complained to their leader, Moses. They said, "Why did you lead us out of Egypt into the desert to die? We would have been better off to have stayed in Egypt." But Moses said, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see how God will save you today. The Egyptians can never win because God will fight for you." Now amazing things began to happen right before their very eyes. The people had thought that they were trapped because of the water, but they were about to see that God is so powerful, he can do anything. An angel of God had been traveling in front of the Israelites, and he moved back behind them along with the pillar of cloud. The cloud blocked the view of the Egyptians, and they could only see night and darkness. But the cloud provided light for God's people, so they could see everything. They could see the Red Sea in front of them and wished they could get across the sea to safety. At God's command, Moses stretched out his big staff or stick over the water, and it began to change. A strong wind blew the water up into two walls, so that there were walls of water on each side and dry land down the middle. God had provided a way to cross the sea to the other side. And when the Egyptians saw the dry land, they followed the Israelites. Do you think they got caught up with them? No, they did not. Strange things began happening to them. The wheels of their chariots began falling off, and it became very difficult to drive. By the time the Egyptians realized that God was fighting against them, it was too late. Now that the Israelites were all safely on the other side, God told Moses to stretch his staff over the water again. Soon, all of the Egyptian army was drowned in the water. The people were so happy that God had saved them from their enemies. Moses wrote a song about what happened, and everyone sang it. And Moses' sister Miriam sang another part of the song. Then she got a tambourine and began to dance. Soon, all of the women were dancing with joy for all God had done that day. And if you were one of the people there, would you have joined the celebration? I think so. Our next story is called God Provides Water and Food in the Desert. When the Israelites left Egypt, they were very happy. After a while, their food began to run out, and they became hungry. Soon, they began to wonder if maybe they would rather go back to Egypt. But in this story, we find out that God sent them some special food. God's people were on a journey to a land that they would call their own. God promised them that they would have their own land, so this became known as the Promised Land. For years, the people had been slaves in Egypt, but now they were free and on their way to a new home. A man named Moses was their leader, and Moses' brother Aaron was his helper. To get to their new home, the people had to walk many miles across the desert. After a few days of travel, the people were very thirsty. The only water they found tasted so bitter that they could not even drink it. The thirsty people began to complain. They remembered their life back in Egypt. They began remembering the good things about Egypt that they missed, and they forgot about the way that Pharaoh had treated them so badly. When the people began complaining and wishing that they could go back to Egypt, Moses prayed to God about it. He asked God to help the people. God answered Moses' prayer. He gave Moses a piece of wood and told him to touch the bitter water with it. And when Moses touched the wood to the water changed from bitter to sweet, just as God said it would. Now there was plenty of water for everyone. God continued to take care of his people on their journey. During the day, God placed a pillar or tower of cloud in front of them so that they would know the correct way to go. Even though they were in a desert, he led them to other places where there was plenty of water to drink. After more than a month, the people of God arrived in a place called the Desert of Sin and made camp. Soon, all the food was gone, and the people began to doubt that God could take care of them. They complained to Moses and his brother Aaron. Sadly, they even told Moses that their lives were better back in Egypt, where they had been slaves. They said Egypt was better than the desert. But God never forgot his people. God told Moses that food was about to rain down out of heaven. And as Moses and the people looked out into the desert, they saw a big cloud. They knew that the glory of God was in the cloud. And God did just as he said. Every evening, a great flock of quail or birds would fly into the camp. The people would gather them and eat them. And in the morning, when the people woke up, little white flakes like wafers covered the ground. The people called this manna. Each day they gathered the manna and took it home to make bread. But God told the people to only gather enough manna to feed their family. God wanted them to do exactly as he said and remember that he would take care of them. But some of the people did not listen. They were greedy and gathered more than God had told them to. They thought that they could save some for later. Soon the manna began to rot and stink and was full of worms. These people realized that they should have listened to God. There was another way God wanted the people to remember him. He told the people that the seventh day of the week would be a day of rest. They were to stop working on this day and make it special. This was a holy day set aside for God, and it was to be called the Sabbath day. There would be no manna on the ground on the Sabbath day. Instead, God told the people to gather extra manna the day before the Sabbath and to prepare bread and save it to eat on the Sabbath. Unlike the other days, the extra manna did not rot and fill with worms. But once again, some of the people did not listen to God. They did not gather extra manna on the day before the Sabbath day. And on the Sabbath, they came to gather manna, but there was none. They really wished they had obeyed God. For many, many years, God would provide manna and quail for the people. If they obeyed God, they did not have to be hungry. To help them remember this in the years to come, God told Moses to put some of the manna in a jar to keep in their packs as they traveled on to the Promised Land. That manna did not go rotten. In fact, it stayed in the jar for many years. So we have several activities depending on your age level, interest, and ability. You will need to print the templates. There are 3 coloring pictures. And you can color all of them or pick the one or ones you like best. There are 2 crafts. The first one, here, is a 3D crossing the Red Sea picture. I have not colored this, but this is to give you an idea of what it would look like. You will need to print the templates. So what you'll do, what you'll need is the templates, plus things to color with, glue or tape, and scissors. So first, decorate your templates. And actually you only need one strip here of the people and Moses. Then cut Moses and the people out, the one strip, and cut out the 3D picture. And what you'll see is that there are some little folding areas here. So you're going to cut the whole thing out, but this area here, this area here, and this area here, you will fold underneath. The same thing when you look at the people. This area is, you fold where the strip is. Here under Moses, there's a little strip to fold. So you want to put you're going to put this strip underneath here, and this strip, the little fold apart underneath here. Then you're going to put the people in front, the people with the faces in front of the ones who don't have faces, and essentially you're gluing the tab. If you look there, you glue a little tab there, the folded part, in front of the picture. And the same thing for Moses, so that they stand up. And there you have it. There's the Red Sea, the water on either side, and the multitude of people passing safely across the Red Sea. Oops. So the second craft is hanging up here, and it's the Manna from Heaven poster. So you will need the template for that, which is here. Here's the template. And you will need construction paper, yarn, scissors, a hole puncher, and things to color with, as well as something that you're going to use for the manna. I've used little pieces of potato chips, but you can use little wafers or saltine crackers, anything that's kind of crumbly that you can glue on for the manna. So once you, so what I would do is glue or staple. Well, first color the picture, and then glue or staple the picture onto construction paper, and then with glue on your manna. Get a hole puncher and cut yarn. So you'll need some scissors for that. So tie the cut yarn through the holes, and you can hang that up. And then you have your poster about the manna from heaven. So other activities include 2-word searches and 2 mazes, and 2 crosswords. Oh, I think that's 1 crossword there. So you have a variety of activities there. So this week, remember, God showed the Israelites the way to leave Egypt, and he provided food and water in the desert. The parting of the Red Sea and the manna from heaven are some of the many miracles in the Bible. Remember, obeying God keeps us safe. Remember also that God loves and takes care of us. Have a great week, everyone.